Oh, hey, Mark. Well, thanks so much for joining me on this call. I'm really excited to have you on.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me, Chad.
So, for those who aren't familiar with Mark, I just want to give a little bit of background for him because he's got a fascinating story. Mark is president of SIOR right now. He's also co-founder and president of Sentry Commercial, which is a Southern New England real estate services firm. In addition to being a broker for the last 34 years, specializing in industrial real estate, he has his SIOR designation, his CRE designation, which is the Counselors of Real Estate, and his FRICS designation, which is a Fellow of the Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors designation. In addition to having all of that, he's also the a consummate early riser, regularly getting up at 4 a.m. And I know this because I've had a few emails from you at 4 a.m. So I can attest that that is indeed true. First question: have you always been an early riser?
I have been always been a very early riser. It's funny. I probably got earlier and earlier after when I started the company. Back in 1991, my wife and I made a deal that I'd probably be getting up very early in the morning and spending a lot of time. So we didn't take it out on the kids. And so yeah, so it kind of goes back to that early. Yeah.
So do you get a lot of sleep? Do you go to bed early, or you just don't need a lot of sleep?
Depends what you qualify as sleep. My wife always says, "Well, you do fall asleep early. You just sits on the couch and not in bed." I actually, it's been a really bad habit the last last number of months. I'm actually as early as 2 to 3:30 risings, so it's gotten even worse. But I typically, I'm usually in bed like 9:30 somewhere in there if I can, as long as I'm not on the road with SIOR and things like that. So I try to get 6 hours sleep, but a lot of times it turns into five.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you got
Yeah.
to make trade-offs somewhere, and I imagine when you're doing those SIR functions, you're out late at night with those guys too.
Totally. And it's not, and it's, believe me, it's not a drudgery. I don't know. I get, and I think you're probably the same style. I'm pretty revved up to get ready to work, and I enjoy work. I enjoy what we're doing. So your mind's always going, and it's like, okay, I could sleep another hour, or I could get up and get after it. So that's kind of what I choose to do is get up and get after it.
Yeah, I share that with you as well. I mean, we what a great industry we work in when you're actually excited to get up every day just to go to work.
Absolutely. 100%.
Well, on that topic, we've got a ton to cover, so maybe just jump right into it on that note. First thing I wanted to ask you is you're based out of Hartford, but with your exposure and involvement with SIR as the global president, you also have a lot of exposure to global markets. Two-part question: what did you see in 2020, and were there any major trends that you saw developing as well?
Yeah, listen, 2020 was an interesting ride, as we all know, right? So we all woke up, I say worldwide, I think essentially, maybe with the exception of Asia, we all woke up about mid-March and said, "Oh my goodness, what happened?" And so, as I say, that kind of the news cycle. Well, I can tell you personally, it was like, "Oh my goodness, I'm going out of business. Batten down the hatches, and what the heck is going to happen to us?" And obviously the way overreaction, but it was a legitimate concern that what does the business look like at the end of 2020? What does the business look like next week? So that news cycle was very quick. I call it a daily news cycle back in March, and then that obviously slowed down over time as we all started figuring out kind of what was going to shake out. And there were some things that shook out just the way we thought they were going to shake out, and I think there's some things that shook out just the way direct opposite of what we thought they were going to shake out. And I would say that's consistent worldwide. I mean, certainly the biggest concern in 2020 as things shook out, office, obviously the office markets and what's going to happen to the office markets and what does the new norm look like. And nobody's really defined that. I think as the news cycle slows down, and it has in the last number of months, we're starting to kind of understand it a little bit, but still not entirely. Certainly the big news story when it comes to real estate would be the industrial side of things, right? So what I don't think anybody, I don't say anybody, but an awful lot of us did not calculate the enormous effect of e-commerce and logistics, right, and the supply chain, and that just absolutely exploded, and not just in the U.S. but all over the world, and obviously in all of North America. So That was a huge positive surprise to us, right? So we just see, and that continues. That continues all into 2021. And then, of course, you take the retail and the hospitality markets, and I don't know what that looks like in Canada, but it's a disaster in Connecticut and in the U.S. and I think generally the world. So. Big positive surprises when it comes to industrial real estate, about what we thought was going to be in the office side of things that still shaking out, and then just incredible pain in the hospitality and parts of the retail world. Not all parts, but certainly many parts.
Yeah, I'd echo those comments as well. And I've actually been surprised that there wasn't more negativity coming into 2021. I'm with you when this all started unraveling in early 2020, around March. NBA canceled their season. I think it was on March 11th or 12th, and then the NHL canceled it the day after. I mean, there was genuine panic about an all outright economic collapse. And for the most part, we haven't seen a full collapse. In fact, the stock market is surging. Asset values have seemed to have held up reasonably well, especially in industrial. But I would agree with your comments. Anything hospitality related has been greatly affected. In parts of Canada, I'm sure it's similar in parts of the US. You can't even legally open your business if you're a certain, like a restaurant or a service like that. So if you can't even open your business and you're making zero revenue, how can you possibly survive? So yeah, it's been a very fascinating year, but I would agree it's not as bad as some people probably would have expected, and I thought so as well. In March, I thought there was a lot of pain in the forecast, and it hasn't actually been that bad.
Yeah. Hey, listen, and you're right. I think generally you're right. I think there is definitely a tale of two worlds, right? And you try to balance that, and you got to try to understand, as you do, and an awful lot of other people, and especially people that are seeing the world, or at least bigger than just their local market. You start balancing that there is still a lot of pain, and it is the one time in my career, I think, that I could see there's such a dichotomy between the two, right? Just some just are incredible pain, and others are just doing incredibly well. And then there's very little in the middle. It's kind of one or the other typically.
That's like Charles Dickens said a couple hundred years ago: "It's a tale of two cities.
It
It's a tale of two markets. There's good and there's pain. Yeah, there's no."
really is. Really is. Yeah.
So I guess that leads naturally into the next question. What are you expecting? Do you have any predictions for 2021? I know it's impossible to predict anything, especially in this crazy time we live in. But do you have any trends you're following or any major themes you're looking at?
Yeah, well, listen, I mean, I think everybody generally feels 2021 is going to be what I call progressively better, right? So we're not sure when better, when we're going to be back to the norm, but I think that everybody feels that we're kind of headed in that direction. Obviously, there's a lot of pitfalls with the vaccine rollouts, depending upon where you are in the world, and so maybe that's going, I think, generally probably slower than a lot of people thought it would be. So maybe it's going to be a little more delayed in 2021. But I think generally people feel 2021 is the turning point. With that, what are we left with? I'm not sure about predictions. I mean, certainly one of the intrigues to me will be what when the normalized e-commerce world looks like, right? So everybody believes that the Amazons of the world are going to keep growing and keeping adding space. And I think generally the feeling is, yeah, they're going to continue adding space. But I've read a couple articles just in the last couple of weeks on their uh, their appetite might be coming down a little bit, right? So they're starting to calculate what's the excess capacity that they've got in some of these warehouses. Are their supply chains calculated at the right way? Are there different ways to do business? And the slack that's in some of these warehouses, I'm kind of intrigued to see when everybody's done with that analysis, just how much slack is in the warehouse. When you start looking about reverse logistics, and now that you got all this stuff that's gone out, how much of that stuff's coming back, and how do you handle things like that? So as much as I think the industrial world is still going to expand, I still think you're probably not. I don't think you're going to see the expansion that you probably have saw in 2020, but still pretty good stuff, right? I mean, I remember back in, 34 years ago when you did a 40,000 square foot lease, that was celebrating in the streets, right? It was, this is awesome. Now it's like 500,000 square feet, million square feet, 4 million square feet. So it's all relative. Even though it might settle back, there's still some pretty sizable absorption there. I think on the office side of things, I still think the story's yet to be told. I mean, we're seeing split um, stories. I mean, we're certainly seeing large corporations reviewing what they're doing and how they're handling the real estate moving forward. And we've seen plenty of examples where these companies have decided, you know what, we are going to cut back. We've already closed offices. We're going to downsize offices, and those decisions have been made. And then you've got others that are really still looking at it. And will the post-COVID area, as you know, will it require more space, less density? And so does that offset the reduction in office workforces? I don't know where that shakes out, but I tend to think it's a net negative. I don't think as much a net negative possibly as maybe people are predicting. And the one that I think is going to be very intriguing will be the hospitality world. I think the hospitality world and how many of these hotels and such really survive this. We've seen really, as I said earlier, as you have some really tough stories. So, how long will lenders hang in there with these companies, and will they work with their borrowers and work through this tough time now that we do have a light at the end of the tunnel? Goes the same also in the multifamily world, right? So, how many lenders are starting to work actually with the borrowers, because borrowers, I don't know about in Canada, but in the US, there's moratoriums on evictions and things like that, right? So you've got landlords that aren't collecting the rent. How long do the lenders stick around? And it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. But I'm not sure what the prediction is. But I do think those are things that we're going to be dealing with in 2021.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. In fact, I think right now is probably the most dangerous time to make a prediction, because you run the real risk of being completely wrong with what unfolds. And the one that I always mention is, and we've heard retail apocalypse for the last decade now as e-commerce has grown. As of the pandemic here, now we're hearing the office apocalypse or the death of office. I think you can't necessarily make any of those predictions in a vacuum, because there's always going to be some offsetting effect, like you're alluding to. Uh, do companies need more space if they get away from that open concept office to have more social distancing? Do lower rates attract companies from the suburbs to come downtown? There's so many variables that you can't just say, well, there's people working from home now, so the office market's going to die. It's probably tempting to think that. And you hear a lot of pundits somehow able to predict the future by extrapolating that out. But I think there's so many variables you just can't predict for that. All you can really do is just follow these trends and adapt as more information comes out. But I think it's dangerous to make a prediction now more than ever.
100, totally agree. Totally agree. And especially listen, it's coming from we're brokers essentially by trade, and it's probably going to have more of an optimistic, biased view on maybe a little bit rosier picture than maybe it's going to turn out to be. So there are definitely built-in biases by people that are giving these opinions, including me. So I think it's best to kind of let that all play out. And then a lot of it has to do with the kind of your socio your environment, right? Because I'm in Connecticut, and so we feel a lot of what's happening in New York City. We're only 2 hours out of New York City, so are my views, do they get tainted and biased by what's happening in the city, where somebody who maybe is sitting in Pittsburgh isn't thinking the same thing because they're not feeling that kind of pain? I'm not suggesting they are or aren't. So we have those biases. We do see big changes in New York City. And does that affect Connecticut? Absolutely. It affects Connecticut on the office side, it affects Connecticut on the residential side. But again, some of these areas might not be feeling the same effect of the big city.
I want to add to that comment and get your thoughts on this, because I think that's a great point. We tend to look at things on a macro level on what's happening across North America, but like you're saying, you also need to look very micro and look at your own individual market. One thing that I've been trying to explore a lot more lately is delineating industrial into either warehousing or manufacturing, because I think that just like tale of two cities, there's a tale of two subcategories for industrial. Warehousing and logistics is actually doing really well because of e-commerce. But if you look at manufacturing, which is still a subcategory of industrial, that's struggled. In my market specifically, we're heavy oil and gas exposure. So with oil collapsing 5 or 6 years ago and been under duress for for that entire time, the demand for manufacturing properties is actually declined and flatlined at the best. So you have that warehousing going up, but you've got pressure on the manufacturing side. Are you seeing that in other markets that you're looking at as well?
Absolutely, absolutely, and I think it's a great point. Everybody tries to paint these food groups, as I call it, with one brush, and you really can't. And not only as you said, you got manufacturing and you got warehouse logistics. You also have what I'll call local manufacturing or larger scale manufacturing. So you got local markets, regional markets, national markets based on your industry, as you said. And there are industries that are doing well, and I think there are areas where manufacturing is doing well because where manufacturing is doing well because the industry in their area is doing well. And a lot of those industries could be industries that are feeding the e-commerce world, right? The consumer products world. Those are doing well. They can't keep the shelves stocked, right? Versus yours with the gas and oil. Our area has a big aerospace dependence, right? So commercial aerospace has had a major effect, and we are starting to see the commercial aerospace companies starting to see light at the end of the tunnel. But we to your point have seen some strain there. So absolutely, you have as you used before, micro and macro views. The macro view is absolutely logistics are going to keep booming, but the micro view really has to do with the industries that drive your areas.
Yeah, and that's why I really enjoy talking to guys like you across different markets, is just to get a better perspective of what's happening outside of like my little silo that I play in. If that's all I did, I wouldn't have that exposure. So I really appreciate talking to you and others with your same knowledge base. It
Uh,
means a lot. So thanks again for that.
one other comment on that before I do the what's it, when you made me think. The other thing is that I found very interesting um, is the you dealing with clients, dealing with customers, or knowing companies in your market, and you're saying, well, they do X. And well, it turns out they actually don't do X. It'd be like oil and gas, and it's amazing how many companies in Connecticut are in the oil and gas industry that you never even knew was in the oil and gas industry. They were serving that industry. So it's really interesting to see the companies. And oh, by the way, on one side of the business, they might be doing really well. And on the other side of the business, they might be tanking, right? And so it's really kind of interesting to see how those all interplay and the markets everybody serves.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. Then that also actually segues into the next question I had for you as well. Is I know you're a very positive guy and you're a very inspiring guy. What do you generally recommend? What are you saying to your employees? What are you saying to brokers? Just other people that you meet right now? What's your message to them on how to weather times that might be difficult, or how they motivate themselves? What's your general advice to people right now?
A lot of that comes from just the way I kind of approach life, and I approach life and business very much so with I'm a process guy. So I'm a coach, and so I coach process. I don't coach wins and losses. I coach how to win, right? So it's not about the scoreboard; it's about how you get to the scoreboard, and hopefully the scoreboard will show the result that we want because we did all the things to get there. And I think it's important for us to take that step and look at what are our processes? How do we win? Right? How do we serve clients? We don't do deals just because a deal shows up. We do deals because we service clients and we do what we're supposed to do to help them. And then if we do all that stuff right, then guess what? Ultimately, we hope we can close a deal, right? So it's really rely on processes. And if you don't have processes, if you don't have ways to go about building a uh, a solid business, then take a step back and develop those processes because the process, regardless of the market, the processes ultimately will take you to success, right? First, it's going to be the success of serving the client. Second, is going to be the success of actually doing a transaction. And so I think I always will rely on the X's and O's to get me to where I or we need to get to. And I think as long as people do that, then they're going to be fine. And guess what? You might not have the ultimate success, which is a win on the scoreboard at the end of the day today, but ultimately in the long run, you will.
Yeah, that's a great message. And I'm a very big process guy as well. And a couple of things that I've believed in my whole career was education and networking. And we met through SIOR, which that's cornerstone foundation of SIOR. So where does that fit in right now? Are you still encouraging people? Obviously, networking's changed a lot now. You can't meet in person for the most part, but are you still impressing on people to go to the education route to learn as much as they can? Where does that fit into it?
Well, it goes back to process, right? So it's part of your process. I mean, if you got buckets in that process, and one of those buckets should be education, and one of those buckets also should be expand your sphere of influence and your reach, geographic reach. And so, and from a knowledge standpoint, absolutely, you've got to be reaching out for education, and you've got to be learning because that's the way you serve your clients. So I find SIOR. Listen, I've been in SIOR for 18 years. There's a reason why I'm the president of SIOR Global. It's because I drink the Kool-Aid. I bought in since day one, right? And I love what SIOR offers for me personally and to our industry. And what they offer is the ability, as you just said, to connect, which is to connect with people like you. We wouldn't know each other if it wasn't for SIOR. That's a great personal thing for me. And it's also a great thing for my clients to be able to access, Edmonton, where otherwise I would never be able to access Edmonton. So I connected to you as a person, I connected to you as a market, and I connected it to you hopefully with some opportunities. And the other component of that is the knowledge side. So SIOR connects you to education. And education comes in a lot of forms. It's just not a class. It's not a webinar. It's right here. It's us talking. I'm learning. I always tell everybody on these interviews, I love them because I learn. And so that's part of your knowledge base. So absolutely all in on SIOR. I think SIOR was able to pivot to the virtual world. And when you talk about networking, right? Our big push right now is say, listen, networking is networking. This is networking, right? Networking is not necessarily physical because SIOR was a very physical organization. We relied on face-to-face meetings. That's not the case anymore, and it won't be moving forward because networking's networking. It's going to be done virtually. It can be done in person. Whatever it is, just go meet people.
And I think one of the keys, and you're the epitome of this as well, of taking on the leadership role and investing so much time, is it's not just enough to belong to an organization, whether it's SIOR or NAOP or any of these industry organizations. It's not just enough to belong to it. You actually have to be active in it, and you have to contribute, and you have to go beyond just expecting things to come to you. You actually have to go out and initiate a lot of that yourself.
Absolutely, absolutely, and just as you teach all of our younger brokers as well, and it's not just younger brokers but youngers, we try to impress that upon them because you give to get. And so you've got to be in there, you got to be giving, you got to be shaking hands, you got to be talking to people, you got to be offering. And over time you will get. And what get means, it means a lot of things to a lot of different people, but absolutely you got to invest in it. And it's not just financial, it's not just paying your dues. Our best members are those who invest their time, whether it's, and that comes in a few different ways. It comes on a local level, it comes on a regional level, it comes on a national or in an international level. Everybody invests in that a little differently.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. So, what's in store for SIOR in 2021? I attended the fall virtual conference. I thought it was awesome. I thought you guys did an excellent job putting that together. Speakers were fantastic. Do you see the ability to meet in person? I know that there's a couple ones planned. Is it the hope that things are just cleared up by then, that we could still meet in person, or what's on the docket for 2021?
Yeah, so this is timely because you probably didn't read your emails from last night, and that's all of them. But we announced last night to the membership that unfortunately we aren't going to Montreal. We were planning on going to Montreal at the end of April, so we were hoping for a physical conference, and that has converted to a full virtual conference. For a lot of different reasons, not the least of which is trying to get into Canada. It's almost an impossible task right now. It's going to be for quite some time, and we're looking at the general welfare of our members, right? And I don't think it's responsible to be holding a in-person conference of 750,000 people in these times. So we did make that decision. We still have Dublin to look at in I believe that's end of June or July. I'm sorry, I don't have that date on me. And then so that is still on. And obviously, everybody's got to still look at everything that's going on. I couldn't make a prediction whether we are, canceling that or not. The plan right now is absolutely to go to Dublin, and we're hoping that this whole, vaccine thing starts clearing everybody up and we're ready to go. And then we've got Nashville in the fall. And so those are our big conferences. They're not, that doesn't include our our chapter meetings and our regional meetings. And we'll see what happens on those. But is right now, it's certainly a day to day. And so we need to focus on the virtual side of doing things until our numbers and the facts start showing otherwise.
Well, I can speak to both actually, because I was in Portland for the fall conference in 2019, and then I was at the virtual one, like I mentioned last year. And I know you guys have finely tuned the in-person one. Like that's a Swiss clock at how efficient the in-person one runs. And I was very impressed with that one. But what blew me away was how you guys pulled off the virtual one. Because this is all new for everybody. I've attended a few virtual conferences which have been patchy at best, and people are trying to figure it out. Understandably, it's hard to have a recipe when you don't even know what the ingredients are. I was impressed that you guys actually pulled that off, and I imagine once people start talking to other SIOR members and say what a great event it was, it's unfortunate that Montreal can't go ahead, but I with how you guys pulled off the fall one, I can't help but think the spring virtual conference will be just as successful.
Yeah, thank you, and I appreciate that. We got a great staff, and the staff did a wonderful job trying to figure things out, and we've got got a conference committee that was really did a nice job along with the SIOR Foundation going out and getting speakers. Obviously, people were real thrilled with the speakers, and it kind of it's a little bit of a notation of the pandemic and opportunity, right? So for every negative of COVID, there's always opportunity. And one of the opportunities at that point in time was to be able to get really high end speakers that we probably couldn't afford in a regular conference, right? Because their prices were so much higher, but we were able to afford them. So three really, really quality speakers. And, we plan on replicating great conference and replicating, I should say, the fall conference in the spring. Learn some lessons there, right? Well, I could tell you one of the lessons I learned is I thought that the educational content in the speakers would be about it, really be great, but the cocktail parties and the social events not so hot. I got to tell you, I was in some of those social events. I thought they were phenomenal. I was shocked, and people think probably I'm fibbing, but I'm not. I thought they were wonderful, and we had a ball on some of those calls. It was awesome.
Well, and speaking of high-end speakers, I think you're a high-end speaker, and I think that this whole situation we're dealing with has allowed people like me to reach out to guys like you and borrow some of your time and your wisdom. So I'd encourage anyone if they're thinking about it, just make a call out, just whether it's an email or a call, just see if someone would be willing to jump on a call. That's how you and I met. We did one of these. Probably 6 months ago now,
Yeah.
and just kept in touch on that. But I think people have more time, and if they can do it from their house and it's a half-hour phone call, I think people are a lot more apt to do it. So I really do thank you for coming on this, and it means a lot. I guess closing comments. Anything you want to close on? I know you've already added a lot on this, but what's in Mark's head right now? What are you
Oh
thinking?
boy.
What's in store?
First you do a great job, and I love following your series on YouTube, it's great to see your content. You work hard at it. You're fun, and it's also informational and educational. So I really appreciate your efforts doing this and having me on. I very much appreciate the opportunity. And listen, I don't have any great words of wisdom. I think everybody's kind of starting to grind it out a little bit, right? You're starting to feel that. Everybody's kind of the wind coming out of the sail a little bit because it's getting to be a little bit of grind and it's taking a little more time to get out of this. I mean, I think my original prediction was like we'd be out of this in June or July. The good news is I didn't say what year, so I still could be right. but you just hang in there, and it's attitude. And as they say, attitude's a choice, make it a good one. And so wake up every morning with an attitude positive like you have. And I like to think that we at SIOR have. I would really encourage people that if they are looking at their own world in Edmonton or Hartford, Connecticut, and they've been in this business and they want to expand their sphere of influence, their sphere of contacts, their sphere of knowledge, and their sphere of markets, to consider organizations like an SIOR. We like to think SIOR is it. There's other organizations out there. We like to think we do it best, but we got a lot of affiliate colleagues that do a good job too. But really try to expand your sphere and continue to try to do that, because it is a big world out there, and we've all learned that the world's interconnected. I don't think we'd be in this mess if it wasn't interconnected, right? So the reality is you might as well take advantage of that, and I'd love to talk to anybody who has interest in talking about SIOR. I know you would as well, and we got a lot of others out there, and I look forward to seeing a progressively better 2021. And I look forward to everybody taking it on and hit it the way we've got to hit it, which is in a positive fashion.
I love it. That's such a great message to end on. Well, if I don't talk to you before, I'll see you at the virtual conference then in the spring here.
Absolutely. Thanks again for doing this. I very much appreciate you having me on.
Thanks so much, Mark. Really
All
appreciate
right,
it.
Chad. Be good. All right. Bye bye.